So, hello, welcome to the lecture 4, which is environmental perturbation. In this lecture, we discuss about the definition of environmental perturbation and what are the extreme events and natural disasters and what are the drivers of human-induced global change. Next in the discussion, we discuss about the reclamation and restoration such as land reclamation, aquatic reclamation, and ecological restoration. Now, environmental perturbation, there are types of environmental disturbances that occur at much larger scale, encompassing areas of size of watersheds to entire regions of continent to even to the entire planet. These disturbances are referred to as a global change. Now, and the environmental impacts and pollution focus primarily on smaller or local spatial scales, such as point source pollution originating from a hazardous waste site or non-point source pollution associated from stormwater runoff from agricultural fields, as per the discussion from the last lecture. There are other types of environmental disturbances here they are: the extreme events and natural disaster. These events can sometimes be significant or even catastrophic direct impacts on the environment and humans. Example includes destruction of buildings and other infrastructure, destruction of habitat, and loss of life. Now, extreme events are natural phenomena that generally occurs over very short time scales of hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks. Examples of which are tornadoes, floods, heat and cold waves, wildfires, earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruption, and tropical cyclones. Take note that tropical cyclones such as hurricanes and typhoons, hurricanes are defined in tropical cyclones that occurs in the Atlantic region, where typhoons are typically defined that as tropical cyclones that occur in the Pacific region. Now, next we're gonna talk about another environmental perturbation about drought. Now, drought is different from a natural disaster of extreme event because primarily it is a part of a water cycle. Yet, drought can be seen as a natural disaster when the event occurred in a prolonged time. Because, in definition, drought is a severe long-term precipitation deficit combined with population growth and water pollution are limiting the availability of drinking water and water for agriculture for many communities and population. Now, about 9 lakes no longer exist or have lost over 90% of their water because of drought. Number 1 is Lake Urmia in Iran, Lake Waiau in Hawaii, Dead Sea in Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan, Scott Lake in Florida, Aral Sea in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, Lake Peigneur in Louisiana, Lake Cachette in Chile, Cachuma Lake in California, and Lake Chad in the region between Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and Nigeria. One major impact of extended drought is the reduction in size and volume of lakes. Lakes supply food from direct fishing and irrigation of farmland, supply water for domestic use and energy production, and provide habitat for biodiversity, control floods, and provide recreation. Now, another type of environmental perturbation is deforestation. Now, tropical rainforests are being cleared for agriculture and settlement around the globe. With negative effects on biodiversity, forest clearing also increases greenhouse warming and increased erosion. Now, effects of deforestation is mainly a loss of habitat. So, because many species only live in forests so much that those species or the species diversity of the forest is lost when the forests are cleared. Now, Also, deforestation affects regional climate change. Typically, each hectare of forest stores about 100 tons of carbon, which release into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide when a forest is logged or burned, as topic from the previous lecture. Another environmental perturbation is called desertification. Now, over 70% of the world's semi-arid zone has been moderately or severely damaged by overgrazing and unsustainable agricultural practices. Desertification interacts with natural drought cycles to produce starvation and refugee crisis in Africa. Now, the causes of desertification are the following: the overgrazing or too much herbivores that is living in the local, converting semi-arid land to dry land crop production. Third is salinization of land through irrigation with saline water, and diversion of water for human use and construction of dams that interfere with the normal hydrological cycle of rivers. Another environmental perturbation is soil degradation. Now, soil degradation is a loss of land's production capacity in terms of loss of soil fertility, soil biodiversity, and degradation. Now, according to a recent report that in the United Nations, almost 1/3 of the world's farmable land has disappeared in the last 4 decades. It was also reported that world's topsoil could become unproductive within 60 years if current rate of loss continue. Now, soil degradation causes include the agriculture, industrial, and commercial pollution, loss of arable land due to urban expansion, overgrazing, and unsustainable agricultural practices, and long-term climatic change. Another environmental perturbation is depletion of ocean fish stocks. Now, one of the first global environmental disasters was the collapse of many of the major ocean fisheries starting in 1950s with the advent of modern fishing techniques. Overfishing can have a broader effect on the ecosystem. As stocks of most desirable species become depleted, fishers have turned to a practice called fishing down the food chain. Top predators such as billfish and tuna tend to be removed first, then the less desirable fish lower the food chain are exploited. This practice simplifies the marine predator food chain, affecting the future fish and marine mammal population. An example of this is the overharvesting of haddock, cod, and mackerel in Alaska, for example, has reduced a population of stellar sea lions which feed on this fish. Another example is fishing for krill, a small red marine shrimp, in the Antarctic, has placed stress on the species that depends on them for food, including penguins, whales, squids, and fish, and other types of fish. Now, another environmental perturbation is the coastal degradation and coral reefs. Now, coral reefs are thought to be home of 20% of all marine life, yet 70% of the Earth's coral reefs could be lost over the next few decades. Interacting with overfishing to place stress on marine ecosystems are the problem of pollution and overdevelopment taking place along with the world's coastline. A great example for human activities is when farms sited in sensitive ecosystems such as mangrove swamp and salt marshes. Aquaculture has produced great environmental damage. The effluent or the wastewater containing feces and uneaten feed from fish farms can produce an over-fertilization of coastal waters, leading to harmful algal blooms and loss of oxygen in water, producing a lot or massive fish kills. Now, high concentration of people along shorelines produce several environmental problems, such as the disappearance of coastal ecosystems such as the seagrass meadows. Now, in their natural state, these coastal ecosystems provide protective breeding and nursery grounds for fish and crustaceans and feeding stations for a wide variety of birds. These functions are lost when they are developed for human use. And when the coastal degradation or the coastal ecosystem is put under stress, it causes a huge impact against the corals or coral reefs that causes coral bleaching. Now, the hard skeleton of a coral reef is made up of calcium carbonate secreted by millions of small animals called coral polyps that filters food particles from water. They live in symbiosis with polyps that are microscopic, single-celled algae called zooxanthellae. These are essential to the health of the polyp and the coral reef since they provide food for the polyps through photosynthesis and help it in the deposition of carbonate. When the coral is put under heat stress, the zooxanthellae, which are equipped with flagella, leave the coral, which become white, or as supposed to be called, a coral bleaching. Another problem for coral reefs is the silt runoff from land, especially when formerly forested land is converted to grazing or developed for human settlement. The silt disperses in the water, forming the fine sediment called marine snow that settles on corals and eventually kills them. Another environmental perturbation or human activity is the chlorofluorocarbons that is injected into the atmosphere from aerosol spray cans and air conditioner. This topic is discussed in the last lecture. Now, another environmental perturbation is species extinction. Species extinction caused by poaching or habitat destruction, spread of exotic species, pollution, and global warming are driving many species to extinction. Over 19,000 of plant species and 5,000 animal species are classified now as endangered. Now, another is about climate change, such as heat-trapping gases emitted by fossil fuel burning, increasing the Earth's surface temperature with numerous potentially negative impacts on ecosystem and human welfare. Another environmental perturbation is the population growth. Now, population growth is the increase in the number of people per area due to natural increase and net migration, or number of people migrating into that place. Natural increase is the difference between birth and death rates. According to the United Nations, the combination of economic development, green revolution, and advances in public health and medical services has reduced child mortality rates by 75% and increased life expectancy by 67% and decreased death rates by 55% since the 1950s. As a result, the global population increased from 2.5 billion to 7.5 billion in 2017. The population increased by 200% in 67 years, and the population is expected to reach 9.7 billion in 2050 despite the reduction rates in fertility and birth rate. Now, another type of environmental perturbation is the industrialization. As tackled by the last lecture, industrialization's mass production creates a lot of pollution and conversion of land for human use. Connected to this is the urbanization. Urbanization is the increase in the proportion of people living in urban centers and the associated conversion from rural to urban lifestyle. The main causes of urbanization are the rural-urban migration and the natural increase due to the decline of death rates. Also, climatic change, extreme events, and conflicts are pushing people to urban areas. urbanization typically improves socio-economic conditions of people, increasing literacy, education, health, and access to social services and political participation. Additionally, urbanization stimulates economic growth. However, rapid and unmanaged urbanization threatens economic growth and sustainability and can lead to environmental issues and social political conflict. This can happen when urban population growth outpaces the ability of the governments to provide necessary infrastructure and employment, and in turn can lead to slum formation, with residents having poor access to solid waste and wastewater management services, clean drinking water, quality education, health services, and transportation facilities. And that's all about the environmental perturbation. Now, we move on to the good side, which is the reclamation and the restoration of land masses. Now, the first step in addressing disturbed systems is to understand the 4 R's, which is reclamation, remediation, rehabilitation, and restoration. Now, reclamation is to return the site to a productive use. Remediation is focused on removing or treating soil, air, and water contamination to reduce or eliminate risk to the health of human and other life forms. Rehabilitation is focused on improving site condition so that impaired ecosystem service can be recovered. Restoration is a general term that is often used to represent any type of activity conducted to improve site conditions. Now, ecological or ecosystem restoration is formally defined by the society or the ecological restoration as assisting the recovery of an ecosystem that has been degraded, damaged, or destroyed. Ecological restoration is focused on the entire ecosystem, including flora, fauna, and overall ecosystem functioning, and not just on soil, air, and water quality. Now, remediation and reclamation are primarily concerned with improving site conditions to reduce human health risks and to support future human activities. In addition, rehabilitation is often focused on improving ecosystem services for human well-being. In other words, they are human-centric focus. Keep in mind, however, reclamation, remediation, and rehabilitation efforts may be implemented as part of ecosystem restoration projects. Now, land reclamation has major methods used to reclaim disturbed land surfaces and soil quality by surface grading and contouring, surface covers and caps, revegetation, soil treatment for various purposes. Now, surface contouring involves reshaping of the land surface. It is conducted by the following general principle: create a geomorphically mature landscape, create a robust landscape that improves stability with time, create a landscape that mimics the natural systems in the area, and use best available demonstrated control technology. Now, surface covers and capping. The objective of this is to limit water infiltration, control air entry, reduce erosion by wind and water, support vegetation, and contain contamination. General types of covers are soil caps, soil spread on surface, or geotextiles, such as they are permeable fabrics that allow passage of water through material but prevent soil from moving through the lower layers. General types of covers are impermeable caps, engineered impermeable caps to prevent percolation into underlying layers. These layers are typically composed of clay or geosynthetic membranes. Another type of cover is a hardened cover, which is typically composed of rocks screened to an appropriate size to reduce erosion and improve stability, and a vegetative cover, or literally a vegetation plant on surface. Revegetation serves to accomplish limit water infiltration, evapotranspiration barrier, Reduce erosion by wind and water, reduce contaminant migration, and restore habitat, because they are the first they are the first claim or first claimant of a certain land, and enhance aesthetics. Soil treatment, there are two common types, which is for acidic soils, lime amendments, and saline and sodic soils by improving drainage by replacing sodium on exchange sites with calcium, leaching soluble salts by applying large volumes of irrigation water, decreasing soil pH by a sulfur amendment. Now, common types of soil being treated: the soils with metal or organic contaminants. A standard approach is excavation and replacement, soil washing, and phytoremediation can be used to remove metals and organics. Now, in aquatic reclamation, this includes physical action, shoreline stabilization, stream channel modification or dredging, water treatment, sediment treatment, aquatic plant management, and biomanipulation. Now, in ecological restoration, we use our natural restoration, which is essentially the process of allowing ecosystem to heal itself without active management or human interference, or active ecological restoration, which is necessary for site where the abiotic or biotic function of an ecosystem has been impaired to an extent beyond the ability to recover naturally. Now, in guiding the principles and best practices has been developed by ecological restoration by the Society for Ecological Restoration. Link is right there, and that's the end of the discussion.